Ashley Renee Lyons was born on July 21, 1985. She was the youngest of her parents' 3 children. A native of Scott County, she was a member of the Cedar Grove Baptist Church and a 2003 Scott County High School graduate in which she was very active in the FFA program. The letters FFA stand for Future Farmers of America. FFA is a dynamic youth organization that changes lives and prepares members for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agricultural education. Ashley's brother Chris was only a year older. They had a small car repair shop. They grew up repairing not only cars but also everything that has an engine. Ashley liked cars, especially the fast ones. But Bobby Gibson, Ashley's best friend, knew that cars weren't the only thing Ashley was interested in. She was in love with Roger McBeath. The teenagers in love broke up shortly after the prom but remained close friends. Even though they broke up, Ashley still thought Roger was the best. She was thrilled when she graduated high school, believing a better life awaited her. However, the lives of young people do not always turn out the way they plan. Ashley found out that she was pregnant, and the father of her child was Roger. She did not hide it from her family. Her whole family supported her, looking forward to the baby's birth. But January 7, 2004, changed the lives of many people. That day started perfectly, but ended tragically. At the doctor's appointment, Ashley found out that she was going to have a son. She was happy when she shared this news with her mom, Carol. She even chose a name and wanted to name her son Landon. Ashley couldn't wait to share this exciting news with everyone. After showing her mom the ultrasound picture, she took a shower and did her makeup and hair. Ashley told her brother Chris and her mom Carol that she was going to Lexington. If we look at the map, we can see that Lexington is about 20 miles from stamping ground, and Ashley would have gotten there in about 35 or 40 minutes. She said she had plans to meet Roger and his parents at a restaurant there. Ashley was going to show them the ultrasound picture. It was cold that evening, and it was expected to snow later. Ashley's mom, Carol, offered to take her car, but she refused, saying she wasn't going for long and would be back before the snow started. Recalling that day, Carol said that the last words she heard from her daughter were, "I love you, Mom. I'll be back soon." But unfortunately, that night changed the lives of the Lyons family forever. After dinner, they heard the phone ring in their house. Chris answered it and heard Roger's voice asking if Ashley was home. Chris replied that she had already left. Roger said he would not be able to meet with Ashley. He said he called her, but she didn't answer the phone. Chris assumed that Ashley had left her phone in the car and gone to the restaurant. Time passed, but no one could get in touch with Ashley. Her mother called her several times, but she didn't answer. It was already 8 p.m., but Ashley still wasn't home. But when she left, she said she wasn't going for long. At about 9 p.m., Carol called Roger's mother and said that Ashley had not returned home after meeting them at the restaurant. Roger's mother's answer surprised Carol and made her even more worried. She said they did not see Ashley that day because the meeting had to be canceled. Upon hearing this, Carol was horrified. If her daughter wasn't at the restaurant, then where was she? Carol had a bad feeling. After all, Ashley wasn't answering her phone. A lot of thoughts raced through her mind as she tried to figure out where Ashley was and if she was okay. Around 10 p.m., Chris and his father decided they couldn't just sit and wait and went looking for Ashley. They knew which restaurant Ashley was supposed to meet Roger and his parents at. When they arrived there, they didn't see Ashley's car. They searched for Ashley for several hours, but she was nowhere to be found. At some point, Chris decided to check out Scott County Park because he knew Ashley liked that place. She fed the ducks there all the time and often went there with Roger when they were a couple. Looking at the map, we can see that Scott County Park is about 10 miles from stamping ground. While driving around the park, Chris and his father saw a car similar to Ashley's. The car was running and had the lights on. As they got closer, they realized it really was Ashley's car. It's hard to imagine what thoughts they had at that moment. Chris ran to the car and saw that the driver's side window was down. Ashley was sitting in the car with her head down. She was wearing a seatbelt and was unresponsive. Chris opened the door and started shaking Ashley. He hoped she was just sleeping. But then Chris looked at his hand and saw blood. He immediately called 911. Unfortunately, by the time Chris called 911, Ashley was already dead, and doctors couldn't help her. Soon after, Ashley's mom heard the worst news of her life. She couldn't believe Ashley was gone. While Ashley's family was overwhelmed with grief, the investigators arrived at the crime scene. Since Ashley was dead before the ambulance arrived, and since it was evident that her death was the result of a crime, her body remained in the car until the investigators examined the scene for possible evidence. The first thing they noticed at the scene was that the engine was running, the heater and radio were on, and the driver's side window was down. They quickly determined the cause of Ashley's death. There were 3 9mm shell casings on the ground next to the car. Ashley had gunshot wounds to the head and neck. The police searched the park but couldn't find the weapon of the crime. The fact that someone shot Ashley through the open side window of her car set a lock. It was chilly that night, and the fact that the window was down was suspicious. The position she was sitting in indicated that she was not trying to defend herself or escape. Putting all this together, the investigators concluded that Ashley knew the person who shot her. It was cold, and the heater in her car was on, which meant Ashley rolled down the side window when someone she knew approached her vehicle. Whoever shot her was standing next to the driver's door. Her purse, wallet, and phone were all in the car. Therefore, the investigators immediately ruled out the possibility that it was a robbery. Inside the car, there were ultrasound pictures scattered around, and apparently, it was them that Ashley looked at in the last minutes of her life. She was 5 months pregnant, so the perpetrator took the life of not only Ashley, but also her son, Landon. Nothing like this had ever happened in Scott County before. Therefore, the community demanded that the police find the one who took 2 lives in such cold blood. The investigators learned from Ashley's parents that she planned to meet with Roger, the father of her child, on the day she died. They talked to Roger, and he was devastated by the death of Ashley and their unborn son. Roger admitted he and Ashley had their ups and downs. However, they were no longer a couple when Ashley found out she was pregnant. Roger was crying when he talked to the investigators. The man had no idea who could have done this to his ex-girlfriend and their unborn son. They brought him in for questioning. When asked about the events preceding Ashley's death, Roger told the investigators that they had planned to meet at a restaurant, but he had to cancel because he had other things to do. He wanted to tell Ashley not to come to Lexington, but she didn't answer her phone. He called her twice, but she didn't pick up. Therefore, Roger called her home, and Chris answered the phone. According to Roger, he asked to tell Ashley to call him back when she gets home. Roger's story matched what Chris had told the investigators about his sister's plans for that evening. When Carol found out that the police had questioned Roger, she did not believe that he could be involved in this crime. Carol said Roger was a nice guy. Their families were on good terms. When Roger had dinner at their house, he always helped clear the table. He got along well with Chris and was often at their home when he and Ashley were in a relationship. So, no one believed that Roger could be the one who took the lives of Ashley and Landon. While the investigators were searching for clues and a suspect, Ashley's family tried to figure out who could have done it. Carol found a diary in her daughter's room. In it, she wrote down her experiences. Reading the diary, Carol noticed that one name kept coming up in it: Dena Williams. Dena was the same age as Ashley. They went to school together and rode the school bus together. Ashley felt sorry for Dena because she grew up in a poor family and always wore the same clothes. There were rumors that her parents treated her badly and even beat her, and Dena confirmed them in conversations with her friends. At first, Ashley and Dena were friends, but as it turned out, Dena was jealous of Ashley and wanted to have everything Ashley had, including Roger. In her diary, Ashley wrote that she and Dena had several quarrels. From this diary, Carol learned something she didn't know about. She had no idea Ashley and Dena had problems in their relationship. Therefore, Carol started suspecting that Dena Williams had something to do with Ashley's death. After Ashley and Roger broke up, Dena wasted no time and immediately began dating Roger. And perhaps Dena was worried because Ashley got pregnant with Roger's baby. After all, she didn't want to share Roger with anyone else. Dena wanted him all to herself. Maybe this could have pushed Dena to do something that cannot be undone. Carol gave Ashley's diary to the investigators so they could analyze everything written there. Carol was sure that the key to solving this case was somewhere in the pages of this diary. When the investigators reviewed Ashley's journal, they also became interested in how she described her relationship with Dena. Thus, Dena Williams was taken to the police station. She denied any involvement in what happened to Ashley. Dena worked at a bank, and according to her, they had an office party on the evening when the crime occurred. So, she had an alibi. Dena did not try to hide her attitude towards Ashley from the investigators. She especially didn't like the fact that Ashley was pregnant. However, the fact that Dena did not feel anything about Ashley's death was not enough to bring any charges against her. So, the investigators let her go home after the conversation. Meanwhile, the results of the ballistic examination came in. The experts analyzed the location of Ashley's wounds, the position she was found in, and where the casings lay. The angle at which the bullets entered Ashley's body allowed them to determine the approximate height of the shooter. They believed that the perpetrator was about 5 feet and 10 inches tall. Dena Williams's height was around 5 feet and 5 inches, which meant it was unlikely that she was the one who shot Ashley. However, Dena had a twin brother, Thomas Williams, who matched the alleged height of the perpetrator. According to rumors, a few months before Ashley's death, Thomas had asked several people about how to cause a miscarriage. People also said that Thomas did everything his sister asked him to do. The investigators became interested in this and questioned Thomas Williams, but he denied everything, and there was no evidence indicating his involvement in the crime, so he was released. While the police were putting all the evidence they had together to find the culprit, residents wanted to do something to show their support to Ashley's family. They created an improvised memorial with flowers, stuffed toys, and candles. Someone brought 2 crosses, one with Ashley's name and the other with Landon's. While the investigators were looking for new evidence, Ashley's family was preparing for the funeral. It is impossible to imagine what they had to go through because they lost 2 people at once. During the autopsy, the medical examiner removed the fetus from Ashley's body. Ashley and Landon were buried in the same coffin. The fact that the one who committed this crime was still at large made the Lyons family even more devastated. For information that could help arrest the one who took their daughter's life, Ashley's parents put out a $3,000 reward that eventually went up to $5,000. People started calling the police and telling them what they thought might help the investigation. Soon after, they received a call from a woman whose house windows overlooked the park where someone shot Ashley. She reported that she may have seen the perpetrator. Standing at the window, this woman saw someone run out of the park and jump over the fence. Next, the person she saw ran up to a red pickup truck waiting for them with the engine running and got into the passenger seat. Moments later, the truck sped away. According to the witness, it was a red Chevrolet pickup truck. If the person the woman saw really had something to do with Ashley's death, then investigators had to look for not one criminal, but at least 2. After all, whoever was driving the red pickup truck could be an accomplice to the crime. Upon hearing about the red pickup truck, everyone who knew Ashley immediately realized who was behind it. Roger, her ex-boyfriend, the father of her unborn child, had such a car. The police immediately seized Roger's truck. They thoroughly searched it but found no evidence inside. Roger refused to talk to the investigators, and there was no evidence against him. However, knowing that at least 2 people were involved in the crime, the officers made an obvious conclusion. Who didn't like Ashley? Who wasn't happy about her pregnancy? Who would be happy if Ashley disappeared? Besides Roger, there was only one person who could wish for this, and this person was Dena Williams. That's why the investigators decided to have another conversation with Dena and her brother Thomas. They questioned Thomas first. During the first conversation with the police, Thomas denied everything, but now, having learned that the eyewitness saw Roger's pickup truck at the crime scene, he became more talkative. When asked if he knew who shot Ashley Lyons, he immediately replied without hesitation that it was Roger McBeath. Thomas Williams eventually made a deal with the investigation to secure a less severe sentence for himself. He confessed that he had given Roger the gun, and Roger was the one who shot Ashley. Thomas also told the investigators that after taking Ashley's life, Roger threw the weapon in Elkhorn Creek. It took a lot of time for the police to find the crime weapon, but the 6-hour dive search was successful. The ballistics examination confirmed that the gun the police found was the weapon of the crime. The investigators knew that it wasn't Dena who shot Ashley because she didn't match the height of the perpetrator. However, they questioned her again, and she confessed that she was the getaway driver on the evening when Roger committed the crime. The police arrested Roger McBeath, Dena Williams, and her twin brother Thomas. It became clear that Roger did not want Ashley to have the baby, but Ashley was happy. She wanted to become a mother, and her family supported her decision to have this child. So Roger came up with an insidious plan. He invited Ashley to meet him and his parents at a restaurant to lure her to Scott County Park. Dena Williams drove him there, and he walked up to Ashley's car with a gun in his hand. Seeing the father of her unborn child, Ashley rolled down the window and reached into her purse to get the ultrasound pictures. She didn't expect him to shoot her. By pulling the trigger 3 times, Roger took the life of both Ashley and his own son. Then he ran out of the park, got into the pickup truck, and told Dena to hit the gas. On the way, they made a stop and got rid of the gun, throwing it into the river. When it became known who was behind this crime, the residents of Stamping Ground were shocked. They didn't expect that someone they knew would be capable of such a brutal crime. Equally frightening was the fact that several people were involved in this. Roger McBeath pleaded not guilty. In preparing for the trial of McBeath, the authorities made a mistake, ultimately influencing the verdict. But I'll tell you about this at the end of the video. As for Thomas Williams, the court sentenced him to 7 years in prison for his involvement in this crime. In the plea agreement, Williams admitted he accepted $1,000 from Roger McBeath Jr. to injure Ashley Lyons in such a way that it would cause her to miscarry. The act was never carried out, with Williams then agreeing to give McBeath the gun used in the murder, according to court records. In 2005, Dena Williams pleaded guilty. As part of the plea agreement, prosecutors have recommended Williams serve a total of 20 years in prison, making her eligible for parole after she has served 85% or 17 years of her term. During the trial, prosecutors planned to put several witnesses on the stand who claimed Williams said she wished Ashley Lyons was dead, had plotted with McBeath to poison Ashley, and had offered people $1,000 to cause Ashley to miscarry by beating her up, the court document said. According to prosecutors, Williams and McBeath resorted to more drastic measures after their original plans failed. Williams said her attorney, public defender Rodney Barnes, told her a jury would probably have found her guilty. "I'm hurt, and I'm scared because I pleaded guilty to something that I didn't do," she said. Williams acknowledged she took McBeath to the park the night of Ashley's murder so he could view the ultrasound pictures of the couple's unborn son, but said she drove around the Colony subdivision while they met and later came to pick him up. She heard 3 gunshots during her drive, but at the time, she did not know what they were, Williams said. "He involved me in the plan without me knowing," Williams said of McBeath. Williams said Roger then called Ashley Lyons on his phone, telling her he loved her and was sorry he had missed meeting her at the park. The jury heard the recording of this message at McBeath's trial. According to Williams, when leaving the park, McBeath never told her that Ashley Lyons was dead, and she never told police about what had happened for fear of what McBeath would do, saying he was abusive toward her. "I was scared to death of that boy," Williams said. "He even threatened to kill me." Williams said she regretted everything that happened and felt terribly for the Lyons family. "I am so sorry," Williams said, crying. "I wish I could go back and change this." However, McBeath's parents, Roger Sr. and Rita, said that Williams was lying, calling her a compulsive liar who often acted in the heat of the moment. The couple said Williams was jealous of Ashley and had agreed to the plea deal to take the easy way out. "She was obsessed with my son," Rita McBeath said. "She was the one who had the motive." When they later got the call that Ashley Lyons was dead, Roger McBeath Sr. said his son was in shock, but Williams was unfazed. "It didn't bother her," he said of Williams. "It didn't bother her a bit." In August 2005, the court sentenced Dena Williams to 20 years in prison. She was released on parole in 2021. In the written motion, Williams said she was very young and easily persuaded by her then-boyfriend McBeath. Williams also said she had no knowledge of the relationship between McBeath and Lyons. Furthermore, Williams said she was not the main offender of the crime and has already served approximately 70% of her sentence for her role in the crime. Williams noted in the court filing that she had completed various programs in prison, including courses on anger management, resident legal aid training, horticulture landscaping, and how to be a certified Braille transcriber. After his arrest, Roger pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. The jury convicted him, but he managed to get his conviction overturned by the Kentucky Supreme Court because a jail informant overstepped his bounds by questioning McBeath in jail about the shooting, and the defense was not allowed to question the informant. John Romano, a jail informant, was instructed by the police not to ask Roger McBeath questions about the crime he was accused of. The informant was allowed to have ordinary conversations with McBeath about everyday things, such as sports and movies. The police hoped McBeath would start talking about the crime himself without the leading questions. The Kentucky Supreme Court ruled prosecutors used illegally obtained evidence and overturned the verdict. In 2009, Roger was retried, and this time he pleaded guilty to complicity to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. The court then handed him a 42-year prison sentence with eligibility for parole in 16 years. The court also sentenced him to 5 years for complicity to evidence tampering, which would run concurrently with his previous sentence. McBeath's parole hearing took place in December 2023. "She was my high school sweetheart. She was the mother of my child. She was someone I loved," said McBeath. McBeath told the parole board he was not interested in parole. "I'm not here to convince you all to give me parole. I know I don't deserve it," said McBeath. "But I do want to use this time to say that I'm truly sorry for what I did. I want to tell Ashley's family that I'm truly sorry for what I did, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it." McBeath said he didn't wish to continue the hearing after declining his parole eligibility. Thus, he is currently still in prison. In honor of Ashley Lyons, Scott County Park, where she died, now has the Angel Garden with ceramic angel statues. After Ashley's death, Carol and her husband, Buford Lyons, helped pass a fetal homicide law at both the state and federal levels. Under the bill, violence against a pregnant woman is considered 2 crimes, one against the woman and the other against her unborn child. Today's story takes us to Raleigh, the capital city of North Carolina. Located in the northeast central region of North Carolina, Raleigh is one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. Surrounded by beautiful oak trees, Raleigh is the perfect blend of history and traditions. However, in 2017, a dreadful crime would shake this city to its core. At around 1 a.m. on September 1st, 2017, a 911 dispatcher from Raleigh Police Department received a call from 28-year-old Matthew Phelps, who sounded a bit sedated. During the call, he claimed that he had accidentally stabbed his wife Lauren to death while he was dreaming. He then suddenly woke up and saw his wife lying in a pool of blood on the floor. "I took more medicine than I should have." "What medicine did you take?" I took course needle, cough, a cold, and courage. I know it can make you kill, but a lot of times I can't sleep at night." "Is she breathing out? Is there a chance of moving, of anything going on with her?"
"Well, okay, we're gonna let me out of drive on 8.
"Did you drive?"
"Because I wet on me because it was dry."
Not long after this portion of the phone call, Matthew admits to why he's acting so strangely and presents a reason for the slaying. Raleigh police arrived at Matthew's Patuxent Drive home in Raleigh just seconds after the 7-minute call. Matthew's wife, 29-year-old Lauren, was lying motionless on the floor. A blood-soaked knife was on the bed, and the cough medicine was laid out on the bathroom counter, supporting his claim for taking cough medicine. Though Lauren exhibited no signs of life, Paramedics still took her to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. Detectives were confused about whether it was a tragic accident or a planned murder, but they brought Matthew in for further questioning. The results of the autopsy performed on Lauren's corpse revealed gruesome details. Her body suffered 123 stab wounds. 44 of those were around her face, and the rest were on her head, neck, and arms. Although there was no doubt about who was responsible for Lauren's death, detectives were torn between the theory of her demise being a tragic accident or a planned murder. Hundreds of pictures on their social media accounts represented the couple's contented life together. Matthew did not have any criminal record. From the outside, they were a happy-go-lucky couple who had it all. The cough syrup theory could not be immediately discounted. After all, cough syrups, when taken in a high dosage, can cause euphoria, delusions, and dissociative phenomena which often result in people acting strangely. In order to solve the mystery of this killing, investigators began to dive deep into the couple's history. Lauren Ashley Nicole Hugo Meyer was born on June 9, 1988, in Los Angeles County. In a tight-knit and religious family, Lauren had a picture-perfect childhood along with her two siblings, older sister Beth and younger sister Brianna. Lauren was known as an all-around happy person. She was known to be hardworking and studious. In 2007, Lauren graduated from Swain County High School in North Carolina. Afterward, she graduated college with a degree in business administration and management in 2011 from Appalachian State University. After completing her studies, she worked as an auditor at Quintiles. She also started her own business selling Sensi products.
I pre-order late I believe starting today. But today until the 31st, I have a special offer for 5 people. If you want in on one of these.
She was very passionate about Sensi, and her Facebook page was filled with photos and videos about her side business, including trips she took with others who sell the Sensi products. Aside from that, Lauren was also an active member of Hope Lutheran Church and worked as a Sunday school teacher as part of her work with the church's children's and youth ministries. In her mid-20s, Lauren reconnected with one of her old classmates from middle school, Matthew Phelps. The two lost touch in high school since Matthew transferred and Lauren's family eventually moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. While Lauren grew up in a loving home, Matthew had not been so fortunate. Matthew did not have any close bonds with his family. He was primarily raised by his grandparents because his parents neglected their responsibilities. His parents separated after his birth. While his biological father was entirely absent from his life, his mother was also rarely around. His mother remarried a few times, but Matthew never formed a father and son type bond with any of his stepfathers. His grandparents tried their best to provide him with love and care, but there was not enough to fill the vacant place in his heart. This dynamic may have been what caused him to start acting out from an early age. Whether his living conditions affected his mind or not, Matthew started hanging out with the wrong crowd and began abusing drugs and alcohol in his high school years. Matthew and his friends were known to have often consumed quercetin, the same medicine that he was now claiming to have taken before attacking his wife. High amounts of quercetin cause a high, which Matthew and his friends took advantage of. This addiction began to spiral out of control, and as a result, Matthew's grandparents were eventually forced to take Matthew out of public high school and put him in a private Christian academy to try to get his life back on the right track. This worked well for Matthew. He started getting better grades in school and eventually graduated. He then attended the Clear Creek Baptist Bible College in Plainville, Kentucky, and seemed to have significantly improved from his early high school years to eventually graduating college in 2011. It was Matthew who stumbled upon Lauren's photos and realized that they both knew each other. After hesitating for a bit, Matthew reached out to Lauren through Instagram. He liked every picture of Lauren that was ever posted. The two began catching up, and as such things often go, the texts soon transitioned to long, late-night phone calls. Before long, both Matthew and Lauren fell head over heels for each other. The two began a long-distance relationship since Matthew was still living in Kentucky at the time. Despite living hundreds of miles away from each other, the relationship between them began to progress very quickly. It did not take long before Matthew made the effort to visit Lauren in Raleigh. Eventually, he moved back to North Carolina to be with her. Being so close to her family, Lauren was excited to introduce Matthew to everyone. Most of her family welcomed Matthew with open arms, trusting Lauren's choices. They saw him as a kind and well-behaved man who genuinely cared for their daughter. Lauren's mother, Lori, thought him to be the perfect fit for her daughter. However, Lauren's father, Dale, was skeptical about the relationship. Perhaps it was just a father's protectiveness for his daughter, or maybe a gut feeling. But as far as Dale was concerned, Matthew was moving way too fast and possibly hiding secrets from Lauren. Yet he could not put his finger on what exactly it was about Matthew that gave him that uneasiness. He decided to set his feelings aside because his daughter seemed so happy. In time, Matthew became part of the family. Dale's suspicions were finally taking shape when Matthew dropped a bombshell at the dinner table during a visit to Lauren's parents' house for a game night. He confessed to having a failed marriage prior to dating Lauren, but refused to share any other details. This raised questions about his integrity and intention, as not only had he already been divorced at such a young age, but also he hid the fact for months into his new relationship. And more than words, it was his body language that looked sketchy to Lauren's family. Nevertheless, Lauren loved him with all her heart and didn't seem to mind any of his actions, so the family offered their support when they progressed to the next step in their relationship. The couple finally got engaged in 2015. The engagement party was remembered as one of a kind by her family and friends. Matthew's mother, whom the family described as problematic, did not really like Lauren. She even went to the point of purposefully wearing a white dress to the wedding to make her feelings known. However, the event went off without a hitch, and the couple tied the knot the following year. The pair incorporated the Star Wars theme in their wedding since they were both huge fans of the franchise. Both Lauren and Matthew seemed to be on top of the world as they started their new journey together. For Lauren, married life was a dream come true. She had her own house, a job that she put all of her efforts into, and a husband who always knew how to make her smile. However, the dream marriage soon began to transform into an ugly reality as Matthew began to show his true colors just a few months into their marriage. Matthew was having a hard time finding jobs, and when he did find a job, he'd soon leave the job with little to no explanation. In addition to that, he idly spent most of his time playing video games while Lauren had to work multiple jobs to run the household. According to Lauren's family, whom she often confided in, this put a strain on their finances. But that wasn't the only factor putting financial strain on Lauren. Matthew was overspending on fancy electronic gadgets and gaming equipment, while Lauren was focusing on tightening their purse strings. He spent $1,200 on iTunes and Xbox subscriptions for his video gaming. He even go to the extent of stealing money out of Lauren's purse if she ever refused to pay for his frivolous lifestyle. Lauren had approximately $10,000 in her bank account before getting married to Matthew, but by the time of her death, it had dwindled to only $1,000. There were other problems in the relationship besides just Matthew's spending habits. While visiting Matthew's family home with them 6 months after the couple got married, not only did his mother give Lauren the cold shoulder, but she and Matthew fought the whole time. She felt like an outcast in their home. Naturally, the reasons behind most of the fights were in regard to Matthew's money-spending habits, which prevented them from pursuing things they wanted to do together. As mentioned earlier, the couple was a big fan of Star Wars, and they were trying to save money for a trip to Disney World. However, Matthew would spend whatever little was saved on his own selfish habits, never allowing the couple to get ahead. Additionally, Lauren was suspicious that Matthew had had an extramarital affair with their neighbor, whom Matthew regularly spent time with. There was an instance when Lauren was on the phone with her elder sister, Beth, while cooking dinner for Matthew. After coming back from work, he went out to hang out with a neighbor and left a text for Lauren stating that he was having way too much fun with the neighbor and that Lauren should have dinner without him. Although Matthew spent a lot of time with their neighbor, he was extremely possessive of Lauren. There were multiple fights regarding a man at their church who, Matthew thought, was hitting on Lauren. Matthew distrusted Lauren, which caused even more distance between them. Matthew justified his insecurities by recounting the story of how his ex-wife left him after meeting another man on a missionary trip. For obvious reasons, his justifications would not solve anything, as their relationship was on a downward spiral. Lauren had opened up to loved ones on multiple occasions about her desire to leave her controlling husband less than a year into their marriage. However, because of her religious beliefs, she was adamant about making the marriage work and tried to push divorce to the back of her mind as a last resort. Despite all of their issues, Lauren still tried to present a perfect marriage to the outside world. On every platform of social media, she continued to post pictures and videos of themselves accompanied by sugary sweet captions expressing their love. Yet that was in stark contrast to what was actually happening behind closed doors. Eventually, Matthew decided to go back to college to become a pastor for their church in an attempt to keep their marriage afloat. However, Lauren was not significantly impressed with this effort. In fact, fed up with his inconsiderate and immature behavior, Lauren was finally on the verge of leaving Matthew, but she would never have the chance to follow through with that decision. Instead, she was brutally murdered by her husband in their marital bed. With all this history, it did not take long to put the puzzle pieces together. They all concurred that everything about the crime scene looked way too staged. Not only were the knife and the cough syrup perfectly set out in certain positions, but Matthew had almost no blood on him, aside from some on his shoes and a few drops on his shirt. This was not consistent with someone who had stabbed a person 123 times. It looked as though Matthew had attempted to clean himself up, which contradicts his claims of being in a delusional state. Luminol tests performed around their apartment showed that there were traces of blood everywhere, which had been cleaned up before authorities could see it. Investigators now recalled how Matthew had shown no emotions when they arrived at the crime scene. Subsequently, Bayer, the maker of quercetin, released a statement saying that there was no evidence to suggest that quercetin is associated with violent behavior. Additionally, a medical report suggested that, at the time of the murder, his body contained a very low amount of the drug, and it was unlikely to have impacted his reasoning at all. However, Matthew opted to stick to his alibi about the cough syrup and did not change his story. So, investigators started digging deeper for more evidence. Upon delving further into Matthew's motives, the investigators found a journal where he wrote about all the troubles he was having with Lauren. He went on and on about his low esteem and insecurities in his relationship with Lauren. Despite Lauren's best efforts, Matthew never felt he fit in well with her family. The neighbor with whom Lauren had suspected Matthew of having an affair with told police that they were just friends and bonded over their struggles with anxiety and depression. She also shared that as they continued spending time together, Matthew began talking about more morbid subjects such as suicide and death. Perhaps he intended to get his hands on the licensed and concealed gun he knew she had in her home. Additionally, after gaining access to his phone, investigators discovered his concerning search history. He had searched for odd things, such as, "How loopy does quercetin make you?" Or, "Have other people been high from quercetin?" Looking solely at these Google searches, one could surmise that this murder was premeditated and he was already planning on using the cough medicine as a defense. However, this circumstantial evidence was not enough to build a solid case against him. Yet, soon another discovery came to light. Matthew had a secret Instagram account, @Marty_radical, where he posted dark images from the movie American Psycho and pictures of him dressed as Patrick Bateman, the lead character of the movie. Apparently, Matthew was obsessed with serial killers and expressed to a friend that he was curious about what it would feel like to kill someone. Right before he murdered Lauren, he posted an Instagram photo with a caption saying, "Everyone thinks I'm a serial killer. #found an angel to kill." The account contained numerous posts that discussed the devil and demons. Finally, it was time to bring the matter to trial. Prosecutors were confident that they had enough evidence to implicate Matthew in his wife's intentional murder. However, Matthew's defense argued in court that this wasn't in Matthew's character and that he was in an unstable and depressed mental state when the murder occurred. With everybody, so that we can all together get to the bottom of this really significant prejudice. To support the claim, they presented a few letters from Matt's co-workers to the judge, insisting that this was not in Matthew's character. The prosecution brought Matthew's ex-wife to the stand. Contradicting Matthew's previous claims of her cheating on him, she revealed that it was Matthew who cheated on her multiple times throughout their marriage. Like Lauren, she seemed to have similar issues in her marriage to Matthew. These included Matthew not working, spending way too much money, and not contributing anything to their dreams together, which ended up causing the separation. Matthew ultimately accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty he was initially facing. But you're pleading guilty to one offense. That's the offense of first-degree murder. It is a felony. It carries the maximum penalty of death or life without the possibility of parole. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Do you personally plead guilty to the charge I just described?
Yes, sir.
And did you in fact murder your wife, Lauren Hugelmeyer Phelps, by stabbing her multiple times?
Yes, sir.
The matter finally came to a conclusion on October 5th, 2018, when Matthew was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After sentencing, Matthew read an apology to Lauren's family.
I'm sorry that I took away Lauren's life. A life that was deeply connected to so little people.
However, his apology fell on deaf ears, as her family said that it meant nothing to them.
Never. I'll take him to my grave. Though I hate him. No way. Old man can do that to him. He wouldn't be.
They stated that they could never forgive him for his thoughtless actions. They shared in a statement, "He was luring all of us into a trap by taking advantage of our kindness and generosity. We never once thought Lauren was in danger." To this day, Lauren's family feels a sense of blame for not intervening when they knew the relationship had taken a turn for the worse. To help others like their beloved Lauren, they've put together an organization called Lauren's Light, which raises awareness for abusive relationships and domestic violence. Do you think Matthew meticulously planned his wife's murder? During the London Olympics, a young Puerto Rican boxer, Felix Verdejo Sanchez, emerged as a shining star. Heralded as a diamond, he was seen as one of the most promising athletes from his country, with predictions of future titles and gold medals. Everyone believed that this talented and driven young man would reach incredible heights in the world of sports. In 2021, Felix Verdejo's name resurfaced in the global media, but this time it was in the crime section. The story revolves around a teenage romance that grew into an obsession, ultimately leading to a horrific tragedy. This tale also highlights how the 2014 Knockout of the Year recipient, praised and promoted by two-time Olympic champion Vasyl Lomachenko, narrowly avoided a death sentence and was sentenced to life imprisonment instead. Despite overwhelming evidence and his accomplice's confession, Verdejo continues to deny any guilt. Born on May 19, 1993, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, Felix grew up in a modest, large family and had a passion for sports from an early age. Initially, he planned to pursue a career in baseball, but a pivotal incident changed his path. At 9 years old, after a quarrel and fight with a visiting friend's son, Felix's father suggested he take up boxing if he wanted to fight. Felix fell in love with boxing from his first training session at the local gym. By 16, Felix won the Pan American Junior Championships, followed by his country's championship a year later. In 2012, he reached the quarterfinals at the London Olympics, marking the start of his impressive professional career. Verdejo had 29 fights, securing 27 victories. In 2014, he was credited with the year's best knockout against Sergio Villanueva. A year later, Felix won his first championship belt, the WBO Latino title, which he defended 6 times over 2 years. His skill and talent left no doubt that he was destined for greatness in boxing history. Keishla Rodriguez, born in November 1993 in San Juan, had a similar background. Her full name was Keishla Marlene Rodriguez Ortiz. She grew up in a close-knit family with her parents, Jose and Kayla Rodriguez, her sister, Beralise Nicole, and her half-brother, Jonathan. Keishla was outgoing, excelled in school, and loved animals, aspiring to be a veterinarian. Her sister, Beralise, was her confidant and best friend. Keishla and Felix attended the same school and developed a romantic relationship in their teenage years. When Keishla's parents divorced in 2011, her mother moved to Florida, but Keishla and her sister remained in San Juan, staying closely connected. At 18, the promising boxer Felix, who had already competed in the Olympics, began dating Elisa Maria Santiago Sierra, a young aspiring model. Despite being in a relationship with Elisa, Felix continued seeing his childhood friend Keishla. Keishla's sister and mother knew about the affair and disapproved of it, recognizing the complexity of the situation. Elisa believed she was Felix's one true love and future wife, while Keishla, aware of Felix's engagement, found herself unable to break away from him. Felix's relationships were tumultuous, marked by his rising fame and the constant attention from admirers. Despite his serious relationship with Elisa, he could not let go of Keishla. This love triangle, filled with deception and emotional turmoil, ultimately led to a tragic conclusion. The once promising star of Puerto Rican boxing, who seemed destined for greatness, ended up in the criminal chronicles, his legacy forever marred by the events that unfolded in 2021. On top of that, he was her first great love, and deep down, the naive girl herself still hoped to be the one. In 2016, the boxer did marry the young Eliza, who at that time was barely 19 years old. Eliza by that time was already quite a famous model, had tens of thousands of followers in social networks, and also opened her own beauty studio for eyelash extensions. In August of the same year, just a few months after the wedding, the athlete got into a serious car accident when he was rushing on his motorcycle. He was taken to the hospital in serious condition with head injuries, bruises, and lacerations. His trainer, Ricky Marquez, seriously feared that his talented charge would go off the rails at the height of his career. But Felix, contrary to the disappointing prognosis, made a rapid recovery and soon returned to the ring. In September 2019, the boxer published in his profile in the social network a picture with Elise, who was in a large term of pregnancy. In the comment to the photo, he wrote, "Soon I will meet my daddy's princess." And a month later, he announced the birth of a daughter, who was given the name Miranda Verdejo Santiago. The young man in public looked like a loving husband, caring father, and an exemplary family man. But secretly from his wife, he continued to meet with Keishla, who could not let go. As Eliza later admitted, she guessed that her husband was cheating on her, but every time he tearfully vowed to leave his mistress. Keishla repeatedly tried to break off this painful relationship, but Felix would not let her go. She had no other men, because the boxer threatened that if he found out about the fact that Keishla had someone, not good for her and her chosen one, Keishla herself, who had fallen in love with Verdejo since high school, continued to love him despite everything. Rodriguez, as planned, connected her life with the care of animals and got a job at the Center of Veterinary Medicine and Aesthetics. Colleagues described her as conscientious, hardworking, and very responsible. She lived with 2 dogs and a cat, which she simply adored. In 2020, Eliza discovered the correspondence of her husband with several mistresses, including Keishla. The wife gave her husband a scandal and threw him out of the house, threatening that she would file for divorce and forbid him to see his daughter. Eliza's threats had an effect. In addition, in the career of the athlete at that time, there was a serious decline and unnecessary problems where he did not need. For a while, he really stopped seeing Rodriguez, but Felix still did not let her go, trying to control almost every step Keishla. After a few months of secret visits resumed, and in April 2021, Keishla discovered that she was pregnant. She bought a rapid test at the drugstore, which only confirmed her fears. She first called her sister, who was aware of her complicated relationship with the athlete, and told her everything. It was out of the question to have an abortion, because Keishla was already 27 years old, and she was ready to have a child, even if she had to raise it on her own. A few days later, Keishla broke the news to the father of her child, hoping in her heart that he would accept it. But Felix was not happy, to put it mildly. He got angry and told his mistress that she should go to the doctor, and if the pregnancy is confirmed, it will be necessary to have an abortion. Naturally, Rodriguez answered him with a firm refusal, but the boxer began to threaten her and insist. Felix said that an illegitimate child will finally destroy his reputation, and this he cannot allow. After Kishla's visit to the hospital, her pregnancy was confirmed, and she now had a certificate to prove it. She called Felix and told him everything, which made him furious. Felix shouted and demanded that Kishla immediately get rid of the child, but she again responded with a categorical refusal. Then the athlete decided to go on the sly, saying that he did not believe her and wanted to personally look at the issued medical certificate. He appointed Kishla a meeting in the evening in a crowded place, which did not surprise her, because they always tried not to draw attention to themselves and did not get in front of anyone. A few days before the meeting, the boxer stopped by his old friend Luis Antonio Padiz, who worked in a local machine shop and also had ties with the criminal world, selling illegal drugs. Felix briefly outlined the situation and asked him to help him get rid of his pregnant mistress. Luis had previously been in the field of vision of the police, and the prospect of being in prison scared him. But the athlete was persistent, assured that everything would go smoothly and the police will never come out on them. Besides, Felix promised him an impressive cash reward, and Luis agreed, with the support of an accomplice. Felix called Kishla and told her that he wanted to meet her on the evening of April 29th to confirm her pregnancy and decide what to do next. Immediately after talking to her lover, Kishla called her sister back and told her everything. She still had hope that Felix would accept her child and would not insist on an abortion. But Berylise all this situation is quite alarmed. She knew that the boyfriend had threatened her sister, and she was worried that he wouldn't do anything to her. Berylise called her mother and shared her concerns, but even together they could not dissuade Kishla from that fateful meeting. At the appointed time, Rodriguez, taking a doctor's note, arrived at the meeting in her own Kia Forte automobile. Verdejo drove there in his pickup truck, in the back of which Luis was hiding. Kishla immediately got into the athlete's car and showed him the results of the tests. He once again talked about terminating the pregnancy, but Kishla, crying, again responded with a refusal. Against this background, the couple began to quarrel violently, turning to shouting. Then Felix suddenly hit Kishla in the head with his fist, from which she immediately lost consciousness. Until Kishla regained consciousness, Felix took a syringe with a large dose of illegal substances hidden in the glove compartment of the car, which Luis had obtained at his request, and injected Kishla. Then, together with his accomplice, they carried her to the back of the car, where there were already prepared pieces of wire and a concrete block. The men tied Rodriguez up, attached the load, and then covered her with a tarp so that no one would accidentally see anything. Felix then returned to the pickup truck while his accomplice got behind the wheel of Kishla's vehicle. Together, they drove to the bridge over the San Jose Lagoon. It was virtually deserted at night, and the men, making sure no one could see them, threw Kishla, still alive, into the water. Afterward, however, they decided to fire a few test shots in pursuit, using the firearms they had brought with them so as not to leave the victim any chance. Having finished the massacre, each of the perpetrators went home. Kishla's co-workers were the first to worry when she didn't show up at the Veterinary Medicine and Aesthetics Center the next day. Kishla has always been very responsible and couldn't just not show up for work without notifying anyone. Since she didn't answer the phone, it was decided to contact her sister to find out what happened. After several unsuccessful attempts to contact her sister, she went to her house. No one answered the door, but Berylise had a spare key, so she got in without difficulty. However, she was met only by hungry animals who had not eaten anything for almost 24 hours. Now Berylise was already in a panic because she realized that something terrible or irreparable had happened to Kishla. She immediately called her mother and told her everything, and then reported to the police about her suspicions and threats to her sister. She also called Felix, but he claimed that he had spent the previous evening and night at home with his family and had not gone to any meeting. The missing girl's mother took the first flight from Florida to San Juan. She thought that her lover might have taken her daughter to a private clinic and paid for her to have an abortion without her consent. Kayla didn't even want to think about the fact that Kishla was no longer alive. The first thing to do was to question the missing girl's neighbors and co-workers, but they didn't notice anything suspicious and couldn't provide the investigation with any useful information. In parallel, messages about the disappearance of Rodriguez were posted on popular social networks, with requests to respond to those who know anything about her fate or current whereabouts. The case quickly received wide publicity, and when it became known that the missing girl was in a long-term relationship with a famous athlete and was expecting a child from him, reporters literally lined up to interview any of Rodriguez's family members. The relatives did not hold anything back and spoke out about their suspicions, among other things, blaming Felix for the incident. On April 30th, Keishla's car was found abandoned on the east side of the city, with her documents and personal belongings inside. No signs of struggle were found in the interior, giving a faint hope of finding its owner alive. On May 1st, a passerby strolling on the bridge over the lagoon saw a strange shape resembling a human body in the shallow water. He reported his discovery to the police, who soon recovered from the water the body of a young woman, presumably the same one the whole city had been looking for several days. Members of the Rodriguez family, who arrived to identify the body, hoped to the last that it was not Keishla, but their hopes were not realized. The body had been in the water for several days and changed a lot. But the girl was immediately identified by a remarkable tattoo on her arm. When news of the gruesome discovery hit the press, the residents of the city revolted and began to go out to spontaneous rallies, demanding punishment for those responsible. The same day, Verdejo was detained and taken to the police station for questioning, but the athlete categorically denied his involvement and claimed that on the night of Keishla's disappearance, he was at home with his family. As there was nothing to charge him, Felix was released on his own recognizance. One of the key witnesses was the athlete's legal wife, who at the first interrogation admitted that she was aware of his affair with Keishla, but that she had heard about her rival's pregnancy for the first time. On top of that, she did not confirm her husband's alibi, saying that he was not at home on the night of the murder. The first thing investigators did was check traffic surveillance footage on the way to the bridge from which Keishla was thrown. That's how they found Felix's pickup truck and the victim's car traveling behind each other. But the Kia Forte was clearly not driven by its owner. On the same day, the boxer's car was seized for examination, and in its body they found some hair of the deceased. Luis was the first to surrender to the police, promising to tell the whole truth in exchange for a reduced sentence. Felix was also taken into custody, but he refused to cooperate with the investigation, did not answer questions, and continued to deny his guilt, despite the presence of irrefutable evidence. A firearm was seized from Felix, which he used to shoot the victim from the bridge, and for which he had an official permit. Also, a cell phone check confirmed the fact that Felix, Luis, and Keishla were in the same location on that fateful night. Keishla's final farewell was on May 8th, and the funeral ceremony was all over the national news. It was a kind of action, calling for the perpetrators of the tragedy to be punished to the full extent of the law, as well as an action to draw public attention to the problem of gender violence. The coffin with Rodriguez's body was brought to the cemetery, not in a traditional hearse, but in a white carriage, over which white flower petals were thrown from the air. Many famous Puerto Rican natives, including show business stars, athletes, politicians, and public figures, have spoken out about the high-profile incident. Verdejo was charged with carjacking, kidnapping, premeditated murder, and the murder of an unborn child. All of these crimes together carried the death penalty, but the relatives of the deceased from the very beginning asked the court to elect a sentence of life imprisonment for the killer, so that he would suffer in captivity for the rest of his life. The hearing was repeatedly postponed due to the worldwide coronavirus pandemic, but in the spring of 2021, the trial was held in virtual mode. The court found that the crime was committed by a group of persons by prior conspiracy and with particular cruelty against a pregnant woman. It was possible to reconstruct the chain of events of that night and the details of the crime, mainly thanks to the testimony of Luis, who did not deny his guilt. He admitted that it was he who, at the request of a friend, got the drug for injection and also brought a wire and a concrete block to get rid of the body. But Felix continued to insist on his non-involvement in the case, although his words could not seriously affect the situation. By the way, the wife of the boxer, who acted in court as a witness, almost immediately after the arrest of her husband filed for divorce and tried to abstract from what was happening, focusing on the development of his business and raising a young daughter. According to some reports, not so long ago, Elisa Santiago remarried. Elisa herself admitted in an interview that she repeatedly received anonymous calls and messages with death threats, as well as death wishes to her and even Miranda. Many considered it was the spouse of the athlete as the organizer of the crime, but no evidence was found. In the summer of 2023, it became known that the jury, having familiarized itself with all the evidence and heard the testimony of all the witnesses, was finally ready to announce the final verdict. Felix Verdejo and his accomplice Luis Cadiz were found guilty on each of the charges against them. But despite this, the killers have not yet been sentenced. The next court hearing is scheduled for mid-November 2023. Most likely, both men involved in the deaths of Keishla Rodriguez and her unborn child will likely go to prison for life, with no right to ever leave prison.